Lord, my head's been hurting, my back's been aching. The water's drying up and there's a hole in the making. People eating bugs 'cause they won't eat bacon. Doggone it. Needles in the streets, folks hardly surviving on sidewalks next to highways full of cars self-driving. The poor keep hurting, the rich keep thriving. Doggone it.
Today's show is sponsored by Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Schools are open again, and Farmer Joe's got grab-and-go delicious options your kids will love. Everything you need and more. Lee County's greatest grocery store, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. Here to explain how the country's going insane, attorney, businessman, political analyst, and conservative commentator, Mr. Ford O'Connell. I am Smoking Joe, and we want to welcome you to Cracker Culture. We open this show with the music from a newly discovered artist named Oliver Anthony. This young man living in Farmville, Virginia, recorded his first song in studio 8 days ago, Rich Men North of Richmond. It soared to #1 and is covering the charts now. Ford, I'm sure you had a chance to listen to Rich Men North of Richmond. I'll play a small clip that everybody's talking about, and let's break this down a little bit for people, Ford.
Your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end, 'cause the rich men, the rich men. I wish politicians would look out for minors, and not just minors on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street, ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not to pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground, 'cause all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. Lord, it's a damn shame what the world's gotten to for people like me, for people like you. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is.
Well, Ford, that is one powerful song. And I played that part of the show because everybody that I've watched a few of those instant reactions, and a lot of people on the left, they're raving about this song. They think it's the greatest song they've ever heard. And it is. It is probably the greatest song I've ever heard. But the truth is, he breaks it all down. Your dollar ain't worth nothing. It's taxed to no end. You got young men dying. Now, when I listen to this, I don't know what you think about it, but, he wrapped up everything in one song that people like me and you have been screaming, but nobody wants to hear.
I got to tip my hat to Oliver Anthony. Anyone who blasts taxes and greedy politicians, particularly in Washington, D.C., deserves an amen. I will say this. When I step back as a whole, this is a message that Washington needs to hear, because this is a message that tells you exactly how working class America thinks and feels, and it's finally been wrapped up into 3 minutes and 11 seconds of goodness, my friend.
Well, look, when I first heard it, now I have listened to Oliver Anthony. I do a lot of research for the videos I make, and I had heard Oliver. That's why I played the song in the intro. It's called Doggone It. But he's got a lot of songs that are very powerful, meaning that like just a good old, he's an Appalachian, man. I mean, look, he probably grew up Appalachian poor. He knows what it's like to wonder what you're going to have to eat the next day. Or he went out and hunted to make sure he had something to eat. This is powerful. And the one thing he's saying, you won't hear any other musician bring up the fact about the miners on the island. Politicians need to pay attention to the miners here and quit worrying about going to islands with children. That's what that song said.
That's exactly right. I mean, in short, it's put America first and American citizens first. And you also have to think about people that just aren't in Washington, D.C. and the global elites. You've got to actually worry about average Americans. And when you don't put average Americans first, you're hurting the entire country. I know exactly. This whole song, Richmond North of Richmond, is really mocking Washington, D.C. I've been to Farmville, Virginia many times, and you're absolutely right. It sits on the foothills of the Shenandoah, and it's right about talking Appalachia, the two divides in America. And I think that is very, very important. And I think everything you've just said is spot on.
Well, what he's done is he's become an overnight instant success. And I guarantee you the folks up in Currituck, North Carolina is proud to have him there. He flocked the parking lot, his first live show after the song was aired. And he put out a video, and the guy's so humble, you can't help but love him, man. He's humble. He said, man, I talked to everybody. He said, I don't want to hear about my song if you talk to me. He said, I want to hear about you. And man, I'll tell you, the guy, and he said, I ain't rushing into signing nothing. I thought that's a smart, my family, like I said, my mother's family, Appalachian poor. My grandpa always talked about being country dumb. You never let people know how smart you are until you have to. And I think that boy is doing a fine job.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there's another aspect that I really respect him for. He's someone who I understand has been dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues, and he's really trying to turn his life around. He'd been sober for a certain number of weeks, and that's when this song sort of was the culmination of that, like waking up and looking at the world around you. I also understand that when he was at that farmer's market, they had the traffic miles long. He was also reading Bible verses and saying, look, I'm not a religious man, but I've been given a second chance in life.
Well, now the part that and he sings that about an old soul in a new world is one of the key parts. And what that means to me when he says I'm an old soul in a new world, that means I was raised up on God and having a father in the home, and that is the old world. It ain't this new world that we have to partake in today.
I agree with you. In a lot of ways on that front, I'm an old soul too. And I think when you wake up and you look at the world around you, you've got to be scratching your head saying, how did we get here? How is it that men can have babies? How is it that we're worried about this pronoun and that pronoun when essentially we've got people that are starving and trying to make a living, and yet we are worried about this nonsense?
And, another thing with the old souls is an old soul has never disrespected authorities that are there to help them, like the police and things. Like this new world, they have no respect for nobody, not even themselves. I mean, it's apparent in the way they go out in public these days and some of the things that they say and promote. But, I really like this song. I'm glad that it bring forward. And, he talks about those rich men north of Richmond. Now, I thought that was funny. Anybody like me and you knows exactly what he was talking about. But then I'm watching some of these people that are, I'm pretty sure, Democrat, and they're loving the song. And they said, what's north of Richmond? They're trying to scratch their head to figure out what he's talking about. He's talking about you people sitting up there in the White House and up.
Well, that's exactly right. And what's funny now is that, a lot of people that heard it and didn't know any sort of background, they all liked it on the Democratic side. And now they're getting crushed for talking about it because in a lot of ways, this is becoming known as this song grows is really the blue collar anthem. And I think part of the problem when we look at this, a lot of people today have been brainwashed and hypnotized into believing that America's awful. They're we hear this all the time. It's what we talk about when we hear about slavery and reimagining the police. And I think that, a lot of people need to break through and realize how hypnotized they've been and how brainwashed they've been. Look, do we have problems in America? Absolutely. But America is still the greatest experiment on the face of the earth. And the fact that people want to destroy it right in front of their eyes. And for most people who want to do this, particularly on the left, they have no idea why they want to do this. All they're told is that there's something better, and yet they don't realize what we have and what we can build together going forward.
I totally agree. And we'll hopefully revisit Mr. Oliver Anthony. Folks, if y'all haven't listened to Oliver Anthony's new song, Rich Men North of Richmond, I tell you, it'll bring a tear to your eye the first time you watch it. Ford, talking about those rich men north of Richmond, they have indicted former President Donald Trump for the fourth time. The redundancy of this bastardization of our legal process by the Democrats is beyond comprehension. Ford, I do have a clip of what happened, and then we'll talk about it.
This fourth indictment in the last few months, a grand jury in Georgia issued a 98-page indictment accusing the former president and more than a dozen others of a sweeping criminal conspiracy to overturn the 2020 election. Megan Mitchell has been digging through that indictment, and she joins us from the newsroom with a closer look at the charges.
Yeah, we learned a lot overnight from Georgia, Kara. This indictment, as you mentioned, it is extensive. Look at how thick this is, but it's also in the number of counts that he faces and the number of people involved in this case. Trump and 18 others, including lawyers Rudy Giuliani, who, by the way, has not been charged before, and John Eastman, face a 41-count indictment, all charged under Georgia's Racketeering Act. This is often used, by the way, to prosecute organized crime, mobsters. These new charges include violating the RICO Act, engaging in a conspiracy to replace public officials with fake electors, and plotting to tamper with voting machines. All of this adding to Trump's legal woes in the midst of his race for the White House. Now, the former president has denied all of the charges against him. This almost 100-page indictment was brought down by Fulton County District Attorney Fannie Willis, who says warrants are out for all 19 defendants right now.
Ford, I mean, this is just, I'm so done with it. I'm tired of this. Let's get on and worry about getting the country on the right path instead of all this craziness.
The Democrats don't want to see that. They want to make sure that Joe Biden is reelected as president, and now they're using the law for partisan political purposes. I mean, this fourth indictment is an abuse of power. And let me just get rid of all the legal gobbledygook. This is exactly what the third indictment is, just with a little bit of Georgia flair in terms of their laws and using words like RICO, which most people don't understand, but they know it must not be good. This is about making sure that Donald Trump is not reelected president of the United States. In reality, when you break down this 98-page indictment, in fact, the clip you show, I find that to be extremely biased the way they presented it.
I agree.
But essentially means that Donald Trump challenged an election in the state of Georgia. And essentially, he followed legal advice in the Electoral Vote Count Act of the 1870s and used a way, because it was a pending case about whether or not this election was going to be overturned, recounted, the elections validated, and therefore followed legal advice and said, if you want to challenge this election in an open and honest way, you're going to have to put forth a set of electors. So basically, he is being criminalized or abusing the power because he's challenging the authenticity of the Georgia election in 2020. And I think what is often missed in the media is that basically Democrats have challenged every single election in the 21st century when Republicans have won.
I thought it was just because he's white.
Well, look, they've done this to every single Republican president in the 21st century. 2000, George W. Bush. 2004, Ohio, John Kerry. 2016, he's an illegitimate president, a Russian spy. I mean, for the 3.5 years we dragged this country into the ground over whether or not Trump was a Russian spy, what are those people going to be prosecuted? Because they were interfering in elections the entire time. And except in this case, with the electors, because everybody likes to talk about fake electors, this was done in an open way, following legal advice. And that's what they're criminalizing. They're criminalizing challenging elections and legal advice.
Well, here's the thing that was really perplexing to me. The indictment was leaked before it was ever even finished.
That's exactly right. This has been staged for almost 2 years waiting for him to run for president and dropping it at the right time. And the worst part, to your point, Joe, is that they already knew what they wanted to charge him with. The grand jury hadn't even voted yet. And they're already publishing this stuff. And the media, I think it was Reuters, is eating this up. This is unbelievable. I don't know how much worse this dog and pony show of evil abuse of our legal system needs to be for people to wake up to see what's going on.
I hope that we see some significant changes throughout our federal government, but I'm not real sure that Merrick Garland appointing David Weiss to special counsel for Hunter Biden, I don't know if it's legal, but I'm positive it's corrupt. I do have a clip on that. We'll go over it after we get through.
Well, I see this as a complete farce, and transparently so. This is more cover-up and corruption by Merrick Garland. And as you point out, you just put the graphic up on the screen, the Attorney General is not allowed to appoint David Weiss as special counsel because under federal regulations, he can only appoint somebody outside the U.S. government. Why? Because Weiss is conflicted. He works for Joe Biden. And Weiss is accused by IRS whistleblowers of political interference to protect the Bidens, allowing the statute of limitations to expire on the most serious felonies, tipping off Hunter's lawyers, scuttling the planned search warrants, foreclosing questions about Joe Biden's involvement, and of course, negotiating the absurd lenient plea deal. And I could probably name a dozen other acts of preferential treatment that the IRS whistleblowers testified to. I mean, look, David Weiss is the last person who should be appointed special counsel. This is the guy who effectively stopped the case against Hunter Biden and in turn Joe Biden. Evidence indicates that Joe Biden was complicit in his son's influence peddling schemes. So, you know, the bottom line here with the appointment of Weiss as special counsel, the fix is in. This is a sham. And when you think of it this way, David Weiss himself is getting a sweetheart deal because he can drag this out, letting more statutes run. He can pretend to investigate and do nothing as he did before. And now the important part is he doesn't have to answer any questions from Congress about his obstruction and the suspected lies that he put in writing. So, you know, Hunter Biden is probably doing cartwheels. He's not only gotten rich, but he effectively got away with it. This is the definition of corruption by Garland, and he is further destroying the public's trust in the Department of Justice.
I am worried that this special counsel will only try to block Congress's legislative authority to investigate. And let me tell you, we're not going to slow down because this isn't about Hunter Biden. This is about President Biden.
Everyone that's cooperating with our committee is under great pressure because of their concern that the Department of Justice is going to implicate them in wrongdoing and protect the Biden.
The special counsel would fall under Merrick Garland, and Merrick Garland's been doing everything that he can to assist Hunter Biden and the Biden family.
Can't have the fox guarding the hen house. The FBI, part of the Department of Justice, has had this now for, as you said, since 2016.
Now, every political news station, even CNN, is coming out with this. It's unbelievable. And now what he said, Weiss is conflicted. Can he actually go through with this?
No, because he's damaged goods. That was exactly the point of the IRS whistleblowers. You know, and he's the guy who inked the sweetheart deal that even the judge said, are you kidding me? We've never seen this in the history of the United States. Not only do you want to let Hunter Biden off the hook, you want to give him immunity for future crimes. There's no question about it. I think Greg Jarrett really hit the nail on the head. The fix is in. So why, out of the blue, on a Friday afternoon, did Merrick Garland appoint a special counsel? Because what it really was a hat tip to the House Oversight Committee and the work they've done over the last 5 months. They're really getting under, they're putting their boots on the chin of the Biden family because they're actually uncovering a lot of things that should be uncovered. And now by appointing David Weiss, the person who tried to let Hunter Biden off the hook, as special counsel, you're going to make it next to impossible for House Republicans on the Oversight Committee to continue to investigate the Bidens. That's why the fix is in. This is all about protecting Joe Biden at all costs.
Well, and by him being conflicted, and what the other reporter just said is they needed someone outside the United States. Now, how do we do that? Who do we go for outside the United States to be fair and impartial? Are they going to call up, over in Ukraine, see if they can get Zelensky, or what would they do here?
Yeah, that is actually in the special counsel statute. I think the code is 600.3. And what it says outside the United States, they mean outside the United States government. Remember when we had Robert Mueller doing the Russia hoax trial? That's what they mean. They're saying that David Weiss, as being U.S. attorney for Delaware, cannot function as a special counsel because essentially he's not outside of government. But here's something else that they don't like to tell you. The Democrats like to say this on TV, independent. Now, David Weiss in this case is not independent because he still answers to Merrick Garland. And if you answer to Merrick Garland, then the fix is in because it's all about protecting Joe Biden.
But who would you have outside of federal government that's in that position that's not connected to the government? If you have a judge, he's connected to the federal government.
I understand what you're saying. What you go and you find a former U.S. attorney. This is what they did with Robert Mueller. I didn't think Robert Mueller at the time was a good pick. But what Republicans should do is give a list of 5 or 6 former United States attorneys, and they should be presenting that to Merrick Garland and say, look, according to your own special counsel statute, you can't be doing this.
Right.
And, of course, Merrick Garland's going to kick back and say, well, we did do that with John Durham. John Durham is the only exception to the special counsel statute I've ever seen in terms of it being someone outside the government. Because 600.3 says 2 things. 1, you've got to be a United States lawyer, meaning you're barred in a state. And 2, you are not currently part of the federal government.
Maybe that can get you to do it.
I don't think they're going to allow that to happen, because if that's the case, Hunter Biden's already going to be in jail over a gun charge. So there you go.
Oh, well, presidential hopefuls ascended to Iowa fairgrounds. The unquestionable participant favored by the attendees was the Big D, and I'm not talking about DeSantis. I have a small clip with this.
Okay. So I always understood you have an opportunity to work hard, get the most out of your God-given ability.
And yet nobody has been held accountable in the federal government for their disastrous lockdown policies. We're going to bring a reckoning to that so that this never happens to our country ever again.
Thank you. Federal bureaucracy and then the weaponization of federal power. And we need to restore our military to its proper place. Right?
Start using it is you stop making them do gender pronoun classes. Like, that's gotta stop. We pull down the bureaucracy in the department.
We love Trump. 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 We love Trump.
Man, I'll tell you what. He was passing out eggs, but it looked like he ate a few of them too in Iowa.
I'm going to say this. The Be Likeable Ron banner, that was a low blow. But
I agree.
I think it's important for folks in Florida to sort of know why you go to the Iowa State Fair. The Iowa State Fair is sort of a rite of passage. And remember, the Iowa caucuses come up first. And what all the candidates are trying to do is get known by the Iowans and hopefully do well in Iowa, because if they do well in Iowa, then they'll be the talk of the town for the next week till we move the circus on to New Hampshire, South Carolina, Nevada, and then Florida. And, you know, this is a situation that Ron DeSantis is in. If he doesn't win Iowa, which it does not appear that he's going to, I think he's trailing Donald Trump by 30, 35 points. But if he doesn't win Iowa, basically his presidential campaign's over, because polling's coming out right now that shows he's no longer in second place in New Hampshire, which is the next stop.
Right. Yeah, but this ain't the first time that he has dropped to third in the polls in New Hampshire. He done this again 4 months ago, and it seems like he just can't get up and keep that second spot.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest problem that he faces right now. Everyone says, gee, you're 20, 30, 40 points behind Donald Trump, depending on the state. And I keep saying to people, that's true, but everyone's chasing Trump. I said, the problem for Ron is that the rest of the field is catching up to him. And whether it's fair or not, the narrative is being set in that he's uncomfortable campaigning. The narrative is set in that he's not always likable. And I'll say this, the Trump guys have done a good job, fair or not, of defining our governor, and it's working for them, because the idea that Chris Christie right now is second in New Hampshire, you and I both know, the only chance that, Chris Christie has no chance of winning whatsoever, and yet now he's in second place.
Yes. I can't believe Chris Christie's still alive, let alone running for president.
I think that Donald Trump made that exact point when he had a back and forth with the audience discussing Chris Christie's weight and blamed the person in the audience for bringing it up.
I want to go ahead and keep on Ron. Now, I want to say this, and me and you've talked about this off there. I like Ron as governor of Florida. I really do. And I'm very supportive of the jobs he has done and completed. I have a little issue with him deciding to go on this campaign trail and not completing the jobs that he started. Insurance is one of them, and Disney is the other.
Yeah, look, I think you make a great point. Let's be honest about Ron. Let's put on our Florida hat first. He is the best governor we've had since Florida became a state. When I look back, all the way 1840s, I look back at the different chief executives we've had in Florida. He is the best chief executive. I will say Rick Scott's better in one aspect, and that's amazing to say, is Rick Scott developed the hurricane playbook.
Right.
After that fact, Ron DeSantis did a heck of a job with Ian, but Ron DeSantis is the best governor we've ever had. And right now we have two enormous issues facing Floridians, and the job is not done. And one particularly affects all of us in South Florida, and that's insurance. And we have got to right that ship. And the reason why I harp on this even more than you do is because you've got a supermajority of Republicans in the State House, and you've got pretty strong control in the Senate. It doesn't get any better in terms of the numbers and voting to fix the problem than right now. And somehow the clock is ticking, and we're doing nothing on that front.
Well, and me saying that, I do think people are dividing the party more by being all Trump and no Ron, or all Ron and no Trump. I stand by what I say. I support Trump for the presidency, and I don't know anything that's going to change that currently. DeSantis, he is a strong, wonderful governor. He needs to do that. I was a little interview with him about Disney. Now, he did start the Reedy Creek, and we were all like, hey, man, I was supportive of it. I know you were supportive of his actions at Reedy Creek, but listen to this clip.
No one has made Disney more money recently than me, because during COVID, they were open in Florida. They were locked shut in California. We said we want you guys to operate because we understood how important it was that their cast members in Central Florida had the ability to make ends meet. And in fact, when Disney closed their parks, I didn't tell them to close. They did it voluntarily. We got all their employees' information. We ran them through unemployment. We helped them stay afloat until they could open again.
You got a beautiful desk back over there. Want to pick up the phone today, give Bob Iger a call, and if so, what would you say?
Well, here's the deal.
Because he wasn't even CEO when this happened.
No, I know, but
that other guy got booted. Bob Chapek.
No, I know. But here's the deal. I would just say two things. Apart from Florida, Disney's had a lot of problems, and I think that the skirmish they got in with these young kids, I think that's a symptom of why they're not doing as well, because I think parents have lost some confidence that this is a company that's really speaking to what they want, the way it had been traditionally. So I would just say, just as a parent, look, my wife and I, we got married at Walt Disney World, okay? And so it's not like we're opposed. I mean, we've appreciated working with them over the years. But I would just say, go back to what you did well. I think it's going to be the right business decision and all that. But
well, Ford, me and you've talked about this, and I don't know what your feelings on that, but that last comment he made is go back to what you did well. And what I've got to say about that, I'm going to let you go ahead and give me your comments, but I've got a little bit to say. I want to hear what you think about this.
When it comes to this battle with Disney World, it's unfortunately the narrative has gotten out of Ron DeSantis' hands. I have been Ron's most vocal supporter, and I really mean this, way back at the beginning, long before Randy Fine and others really jumped on board. I was talking about this almost a year and a half ago about why he's right. And what Ron never explains to people outside of the state of Florida is that in Florida, Disney has rights, special rights, that no other corporation in Florida can avail itself of. And now, we gave Disney those rights in the 1960s when they had to clear out that swampland in Orlando. But they should not continue to operate as their own country within Florida, and therefore those rights need to essentially expire. The problem is Ron never really makes that case. What he always seems to be talking about is pronouns, or when they said the don't say gay, which you and I both know is about what's age appropriate. And that's all people outside of Florida see. And now Bob Iger, the CEO of Disney, knows that he is going to keep the iron on Ron DeSantis for as long as possible, because he's basically saying, I can wait you out. You will not last as Florida governor longer than I will last as CEO of Disney. And essentially, when you're gone, I'm going to run roughshod over Florida.
What I have to say about this, and it seems a bit goofy hearing Ron telling Disney to go back to what they did well. Well, who in the hell in Whoville hasn't said the same thing to Ron? Donald's not going to let you duck past him in the polls, and that's just dopey to think you will. Don't let the Lion Kings make you look like Dumbo. Ron, get your ass back to Florida, buddy. That's what I got to say.
I'm surprised you didn't throw a little Snow White in there as well. I got to give you a little credit. That was very good. But to your point, we have very pressing issues in Florida. And look, I just do not think that Ron DeSantis is going to win the presidential nomination. I'm like you. Until something changes my mind, I am voting for Donald Trump when the circus comes to Florida. But that does not mean that Ron DeSantis is not my favorite governor, which he is, in the history of Florida, and I wouldn't go to bat for him any way possible within the state of Florida. But we have very serious problems in Florida. Right now, we are the best state in the country. As you always say, Texans need heroes. We are the best state in the country, and we need to make sure that we keep it that way for the long term. And what that means is you got to focus on insurance, particularly as it relates to South Florida, and it means you need to fix this Disney fiasco as quickly as possible, because, again, we like Disney. They just have to be good corporate citizens of Florida and not taking advantage of Floridians.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Well, for our final story of the day, and most of you that do subscribe, wait to hear what I have to say in Lee County. Well, I woke up to my phone ringing off the hook, my emails full. It's just impossible. In Lee County, we have pointed out, me and Ford have pointed out the division that's been going on within our local Republican Party. It's not good for Ron. It's not good for Trump. It's not good for anybody, any real politician locally. It's been ongoing. We have asked for a forensic audit from outside auditors, and finally somebody else asked that question. State Representative Mike Jen Lombardo out of Cape Coral drafted a letter asking for a full audit of the last 3 years of spending. Now, this has got to do with all the COVID money and things like that. Now, I did reach out to a few members of Cape Coral today, and, I told them, I said, Mike's got something. He wouldn't go for this unless he knows something. And I think it's got a lot to do with getting rid of the budget review committees and things like that. Why are they getting rid of all these things? And people are in arms over this for. What do you think about this?
Well, I mean, I think the biggest question is, we've been talking, for over a year now about forensic audits in Lee County. My question is, and I tip my hat to Mike Gianlombardo, but why are you raising the alarm now? Why weren't you saying something about this a year ago? And I understand there's some stuff with Ian that's what we're led to believe. Again, I don't know the full story yet. I don't think any of us do. But why are you raising the alarm now when you could have brought up some of this forensic audit stuff prior to this?
And I think that after the conversations I've had with a few people, I don't think that he could raise it up. I don't think they let him. I think they shut him up, and he finally had all he could take. That's what I think. And the fact, now look, unbelievably, his request was supported by Jonathan Martin, State Representative Adam Botana, and Tiffany Esposito. None of them are people that I've supported. Look, Adam, I just don't think Adam's got enough sense to do the job. Tiffany just don't do the job. But I'm surprised they signed on with Mike.
Look, I hear you, and I think that raises an even bigger question as this unfolds, and hopefully none of this is swept under the rug, which is always my greatest fear. But, as more's coming in and we're learning more, how serious do you think this is?
I think it's huge. And the reason why is his request for this outside audit. It sparked a lot of controversy amongst fellow Republicans who were appalled by the very question of an outside audit. Spencer Roach, Jenna Persons Mullica, and, Senator Ben Albritton and Kathleen Possadoma, they didn't sign. But, Kathleen, she's Ron's right-hand man. She ain't going to participate in that. And, they're coming out so well. Spencer Roach. Now, why would you be opposed to an outside audit? If you were a representative, you should want people to know where their money's at. But look what Spencer Roach said when he was asked about it. He said, I know each one of the Lee County commissioners personally, cannot attest to their integrity and ethics. I do not have a reason to believe that they are misappropriating funds or engaged in any type of impropriety, real or perceived, with tax dollars under their stewardship. That's what Roach said. He also said he's proud. He worked hard to bring back $350. And he went on and on with the recovery here. Spencer Roach don't want this out. Why?
Well, it's also Jenna Persons, too. I mean,
well, I think we can get into why she don't want it out, but why?
Yeah, I don't understand it. I think that is what should be confounding Lee County residents, because all of a sudden, usually they move in unison, and now you see a divide over something that we've been talking about for more than a year, and now they're taking sides. And I think that this is very, very interesting. And let's remember, without bringing him into the equation, many of these people are Terry Miller's clients.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So now you got a civil war, potentially among Terry Miller's clients. Now, how is that going to play out as well? I don't know.
Well, I don't know if the rats are jumping ship, but I'll tell you, people are moving around here and asking questions. I got people calling me that don't call me, want to know what I know about what's going on. I just know there's something big. My researchers have the actual letter. I'm waiting for them to go through it and send it to us. I think that it's going to be broke on one of the other news networks today, if it hasn't already. This is big. And when you talk about Jenna Persons Mullica, now her husband, who is running for commissioner, the very board they want the audit on, why wouldn't she be supportive of this? Wouldn't she want her husband to go into a job with a clean slate?
Hey, I'll just say this. If I were running for county commissioner in Lee County, the first thing I'd be running on is transparency and accountability. That would make the most sense to me. I think we need to step back for a second and say, look, let's say this is broken in the local news. What should we expect to come from this? I mean, assuming it's not swept under the rug, of course, and enough of it gets out there. I mean, what do you think we should be expecting? Because, there's going to be a slow drip about this if it actually does see the light of day.
Well, I think we're going to see a lot of misappropriation of funds and money going to places it should not have gone to and unaccountable. You go back, look, we've had a problem with money disappearing in this area. We've talked several times about when Sam Fisher was over at Oasis. Where did that million go? There's a lot of money that just disappears in Southwest Florida.
Yeah, there's no question about it. We've always wondered sometimes where the money goes with the school board as well. I mean, I think the question that a lot of people want to know is, okay, we're talking about an audit. Okay, what about, how does this relate also? Does this include the school board, Joe?
It does not. Now, and I think Mike's just not real familiar with the laws. I follow the school board laws very hard, so does my researchers. What he said is other municipalities. Now, other municipalities, that means Cape Coral. And other people want to say that means that he's talking about the sheriff's department and the school board. Now, while I can't attest about anything to do with Carmine's office, I can tell you that he will not be able to get an audit of the school board because Lee County School Board is the only entity not under the jurisdiction of the clerk of court scrutiny regarding finances.
I think that's important to repeat because we often talk about why we need to get to the bottom of what's going on with Lee County schools. And you just basically made the point that, you can have people calling for audits. You can even have an audit, but essentially you can't have an audit or force an audit of the Lee County School Board and the schools.
Well, what happens is most legislators, they're naive to the fact that years and years ago, the good old boy system that's still ongoing in Florida, they proposed a law that shut down nepotism in the entire state in the school district. Now you can bring your whole family in according to Florida state laws. This is the only state that does it. However, the rest of the districts, they have made bylaws like in Dade County and others to prevent the nepotism from going on. Now, that didn't happen here, and people ask why. There are special rules that were made way back. People have tried that know about them to get them changed, and they've been washed under. Lee County School Board is the only entity not under the jurisdiction of the clerk of courts for scrutiny regarding the finances. So, unless the school board, or in that case, the school board has to request the outside audit of themselves, much like what state representatives trying to get the Board of County Commissioners to do.
So what you basically said is Kevin Carnes can't force this. The legislature can't force this when it comes to the Lee County schools. Only the Lee County School Board can do this. And what you've basically also said is that nepotism is allowed in Florida politics. I mean, didn't we start this show off with Richmond, north of Richmond? I mean, we got to now start talking about Richmond, north of Everglades City, because essentially this has gotten out of control. And you know that most people don't know what you just said? That only the school board can call for its own audit because of the good old boy network set way back. And that nepotism is okay in Lee County because somehow no one ever challenged that possibility. But in corrupt counties like Broward and Dade, they have. Now think about that for a second.
Look, you know, if you want to make sure you keep your family thriving and employed, come to Lee County and get in politics because we'll just keep the family rolling.
I like it. Richmond, north of Everglades City. That's going to be our new one.
Well, Ford, I think we're going to stop. We are going to revisit this story, folks, because we're going over this letter to see why these certain people would not want us knowing where our money is going. Why? Why would a state representative, Spencer Roach, or Jenna Persons Malika, not want us to know what we're doing with our cash? That's the question everybody ought to be inflamed about in Florida and finding out. Get out there, ask these questions, folks, and do not put in another candidate just because a political strategist is pushing dollars to get him there. Ford, I appreciate you joining me today. And like I said, I enjoy these conversations, and I can't wait till we can discuss more about Mike Gianlombardo's letter requesting the audit. Again, I will say that I've been very hard on some of these people. Jonathan Martin, me and him have our differences. I still think that he only signed this because he knows something's wrong and he's an opportunist. And so is Adam Botana. A broke clock's right twice a day, so hopefully Adam's got another hand on there. So hopefully Adam get it.
We'll find out, my friend.
Hey, Ford, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. Ford, thanks a lot, brother. I'll catch you next time. Folks, please like, share, subscribe. Get out there, tell folks what's going on. And if we find out something that we can give you for ammunition to fight against the evil that is destroying our Florida, we're going to give it to you. Thanks again. Love, peace, and gator grease.